Happy Tuesday. I'm Diane Rayner, your host with the After Shift Report. And today I want to talk to you about the word indifference. I was reading something last week and that word popped up, and I can be a little bit of a nerd sometimes, and I just get caught up on a word and I'm like, indifference. And it really resonated with me because I have been through burnout. And simply defined, the word indifference is just not caring. You may be very apathetic. And I remember when I went through my burnout that I really just didn't care. I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about my family. I didn't care about my work. I I just merely existed. Um, and it's a bad feeling. And so while I hate that the pandemic and everyone being locked down has increased the burnout that is present, the blessing in all that is that it's brought it to the surface. It's brought it to light, and it's okay to admit that you're burned out. And know, and that's kind of like the beginning of healing. It's just recognizing that you are in this situation. So, what are some of the causes, and how do we move past some of these feelings? So that's what I want to talk to everyone about today. And again, this is a huge topic. It's not something that I'm going to solve in just a few minutes, but I'm always about increasing everyone's awareness, just being open to the possibility that this could be you, and what are some of the things that you're doing to help move yourself past that. So, okay, so when you're feeling indifferent, you can sense that your work doesn't matter, that you're replaceable, and that you're underappreciated actually. And burnout is really rampant everywhere. It affects all generations. No one gets to escape the feeling. So, what are some of the reasons that we get to this point? You know, in the last couple of years, of course, with the pandemic and lockdown, and just there's a lot of political stress. There's climate disasters, there's continued racial injustice, and people are just in general just struggling to cope with business as usual. We've been confined to our homes, and work may have had to take on a whole new look, and how you get your groceries even has perhaps changed. And there was a fear piece to all this as well. So all of this kind of compounds and it builds upon itself. And then we end up where we are now, just kind of indifferent in our life. So what are some things that you can do? Now, these are just some simple strategies, and you may want to write them down. You may want to re-listen to the video so that you can write them down. But creating work boundaries is a huge one. If you work from home or you work on a computer, when you've been on that computer for 8 hours, it's time to stop. It is just not good for anybody to be sitting in front of a electronics for that long. So when it's time to quit, quit. If you're in, of course, my focus is a lot on healthcare, and I read constantly about nurses and other healthcare professionals just working 16 hours, working 12-hour days for 7 days straight. That's just not sustainable. And if you need permission to not do that, I'm going to give you permission. You just don't need to do that. This is, again, the oxygen mask approach. When your time is done, you need to break away from work. It's just that important. If you don't, as you're probably finding right now, you're not good for yourself, much less anybody else. So create those work boundaries. Another one is your own emotional boundaries. For example, when you get home, it's so tempting to talk to a spouse, or even your friends about work. There's some sources that say just don't talk about work at all. I I kind of disagree with that. I think maybe a better approach, and this is just my opinion, is limit your work talk to maybe just 5 minutes. And this is just something in my own household. my husband and I kind of just naturally kind of gravitated to this over the last 40 years is we each allow ourselves a little bit of like maybe 5 minutes. How was your day? And you just kind of dump it. You just kind of, just like I said, just dump it. And and then we just kind of let it go. We don't bring it back up. We don't talk about it anymore. And that way we get it out. It's not just sitting there spiraling around in our mind and eating at us. We've dumped it. And excuse me, another thing that I did that was so helpful. This is kind of a funny story. I worked in the intensive care unit for over 15 years. And so, of course, I'm working with ventilators and all kinds of tubes and stuff. And when my husband and I first got married, I would get up in the middle of the night, and I guess I was sleepwalking, and I would be alongside of him, and in my mind, in my dream, I was checking his tubings, I was checking his pulses in his feet, and just doing that head-to-toe assessment. And bless his heart, he woke up one time, he's like, honey, what are you doing? And I said, it's okay. I'm just checking your ventilator tubing and your pulses. And he just always said, oh, okay, honey, they're okay. You can come back to bed now. He never, it was just so perfect with how he handled me. But that's like, that was an eye-opening situation for me. I realized that I was carrying work home and even into my sleep. So what I did to combat that is I found a spot on my drive home. For me, it was a stoplight, and I asked myself when I got to that stoplight, am I thinking about work? Now, I allowed myself to think about it up until that point, and if I was still thinking about it, I said, well, I'm just going to dump that here, and I didn't think about it anymore. Now, that does take practice. It sounds so easy, doesn't it? And there's lots of variations to that story. There are people who hang it on a tree outside their house, and they go through a motion of pretending to hang their troubles on the tree as they go in. But, give that a try. And then it's important also to separate work life from your personal life. And some great strategies, they're very simple, is maybe having a physical or a tangible task that separates work from your personal life. For example, when you leave work, can you go for a walk? Go to a park perhaps and walk, or if you have children, can you just go play with kids? If you're getting home and you're quiet and alone, what about a good book? Or if your mind can't take in the whole story in a book, the concept of the plot, how about a magazine? Something just to give your mind a break, okay? But that's so simple. Just something that separates work from personal. And then it's so important. Another strategy is just to cultivate friendships. Or maybe even renew friendships. When we weren't allowed to be together, it became more tricky to do that. I have several friends that we have regularly scheduled Zoom meetings even now. So those are important to cultivate. And, keep it simple. I did something back in June for the summer solstice. It wasn't actually on the actual day, but the weekend after the summer solstice, I had several girlfriends over, and everything was simple. Everybody brought one little thing. It wasn't about eating food. It was just, so I didn't have to feel like I had to provide all this stuff. Everybody just brought a little something, and we just sat out on my screen porch and just sat there for hours, just girl talk. And it's so important to do that. And at the end of the evening, I think we all just felt lighter and engaged again in our life. So I encourage you to do that. It can be like the same women, we're all getting together on the 25th and having dinner together. So it can be very simple. Seek some new opportunities. If there's something that you've been wanting to learn that you can do in a new course, do that. Sign up for it. Over the years, one of the things that I did through just the community education through the local community college was I did flower arranging. I don't know why, but I just did. And you know what? I had a good time just arranging flowers. It got my mind off of work. and it was just something for me. If there's a craft you want to work on, you want to learn to sew, knit or gardening or whatever, seek out something new. That just does so much for your spirit, just to be engaged in learning something. And then we always hear about self-care, don't we? And you know, uh, I think so often people think about pedicure or manicure for self-care, and they're great. I love me a good manicure or pedicure, but it doesn't even have to be that complicated. It can be things such as like if you're at work and you're sitting a lot, are you making sure you're getting up and stretching during the day? I mean, literally set your timer on your phone that every hour that you get up and just literally stretch. If it's just walking around your office or the area for a moment or two, are you hydrating? We get so caught up in our work that we forget to drink, and so that's a simple thing that we can do. I like to take my quiet breathing breaks, and if that means when you go to the bathroom, you just sit there and just take a couple of minutes just to deep breathe. Do your favorite little breathing exercise and just do it for 2 or 3 minutes. That is so restorative to helping you get through the rest of your day. I really encourage you to take your breaks. I know in the healthcare field that can be very hard. Trust me, I've gone my full 12 hours without using the restroom or eating and barely drinking, and it's not a good thing. So sometimes it's something we think we can't do, but open yourself to the possibility of how might I feel if I could just stop for 15 minutes. So take your breaks if you can. When you're eating, eat good food. Eat food that's really going to sustain your body. I was the queen of candy bars, and that did not serve me well. So, plan to have good food when you're at work. On your off time, exercise. It And exercise doesn't have to be going to a formal gym. It can be as simple as going bike riding, swimming. Oh, goodness. There's plenty of apps online. I do yoga online all the time. So there's walking programs that you can do online that can just be done in your own home. So make sure you're getting exercise. And then it's so important, as I mentioned earlier, spending time with others. That just restores your soul so much. Get outside, just there's so much that can be gained just being in nature. So don't forget to be outside. Reading. If you love to read, get you a good book and just go travel with wherever that book goes. Interact with your pet. I have two dogs that I just adore, and you know what? When I sit and brush them, they are just in hog heaven, and it's just a way of connecting with them, and it just takes my mind off of anything that I've got going on. You play with your kids or play with other children, and those are just some quick, simple things that you can do. And the last tip I have for everyone is ask for help. This is there's no shame in being burned out. It's obviously all the things that I mentioned are easy things that you can do, but sometimes it takes someone to help hold you accountable, someone who hears you, someone who's helping you to dig deeper inside for answers that you don't even know that there are questions to. So always be encouraged to reach out for help. I hope this is helpful, and if anybody has any comments, please feel free to direct message me or leave a comment below. Well, bye for now, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. See you next Tuesday.